Hello, everyone. Welcome to Proficy 2026, our annual leadership strategy and product launch webinar series. My name is Alexis Murphy, and I will be your host today. On today's webinar, we'll be talking about how Proficy Operations Hub helps your teams increase operational efficiency and make better decisions based on real-time and historical plant-wide application data. Users can monitor, control, provide data entry, and perform analysis all in one place. This webinar will cover the latest enhancements to Proficy Operations Hub, as well as a teaser of enhancements to come later in 2026, such as an integration with Proficy Data Hub, event-based scripting enhancements, runtime substitution, and reusable pop-up support. Now, before we get into the fun stuff, I want to be sure to mention that today's event may include forward-looking statements. The information presented is intended to be an outline of general product direction, and it should not be relied on in making a purchasing decision. Now for some housekeeping. You should all see an interface with some buttons at the bottom of your screen. They look like the ones on the right side of the slide here. Please send any questions you have through that orange chat bubble button, through the purple envelope button. You can contact our team. Through the blue paperclip button, this is our most important button, as it's where you'll find relevant content and resources related to today's webinar. Through that orange person icon, you can connect with today's presenter, our product manager for Operations Hub, Amy Wooten. If you need technical assistance, please reach out through the orange question mark button, though most of your issues can be resolved just by refreshing your browser. And then lastly, we ask that you please share your feedback through the pink checklist button. It's where you can send us your latest challenges and initiatives, and it's how we really use that information to build our products collaboratively with your insight. With that, I would like to introduce Amy Wooten. She's a product manager for GE Vernova's automation software, including the cross-platform visualization control and OTBI solution, Proficy Operations Hub. She has served for over 10 years in different seats across GE Vernova and GE in a variety of roles, including product management, engineering, technical product management, and UX. She joined GE as part of the esteemed Edison Engineering Development Program, featuring rotations across key development initiatives. She holds an MS and BS in computer science from Massachusetts Institute of Technology. She is passionate about developing software aligned to customer needs and has worked extensively with customers around the world in industries such as food and beverage, consumer packaged goods, automotive, water, wastewater, and heavy industry. With that, I'll kick it over to Amy. Take it away, Amy.
Thanks, Alexis. Hey folks, my name is Amy Wooten, and as Alexis mentioned, I'm the product manager for Proficy Operations Hub, and I'm really excited to be here today to talk about the Proficy Operations Hub 2026 release. So that is coming out very soon. We're estimating about mid-July. Before I go into that, first, I'd like to just recap. Hopefully folks know, they've been keeping up, that Proficy is now a part of Velotic, and we support an entire suite of industrial software and solutions that help our customers' key outcomes. So things like increasing quality, increasing productivity, and reliability, and help you meet your sustainability goals. So we are working on the hardest industrial challenges from the plant floor to the cloud and across the enterprise. All right, and as I mentioned, we have an entire portfolio with different products. Everything from products that target automation and manufacturing execution to industrial data management, product optimization, and scheduling. So anywhere from the plant floor up through the cloud and through the enterprise, we have different solutions that might fit your needs. All right, and without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and go into Proficy Operations Hub. So for folks who are new to Proficy Operations Hub, I'll just mention that we are a rapid application development tool. The idea here is that, instead of creating different applications and operations interfaces from scratch, we give you the tools you need to design these applications and a lower time and a lower cost of maintenance and quicker time to value. So some of the building blocks that we give you are things like data connectivity, having access to both the Proficy suite full of products data to third-party data sources as well. We include modeling. So if you want to go ahead and take your data and structure it, we allow for that. We provide different types of visualization in the form of out-of-the-box widgets, but you can also create your own. And finally, we have this area for screen building. And the basic idea is you can drag and drop different elements onto the page. You can bind them to data and save it and view your data on your screen when you launch it. So we have both the sort of designer interface and the final application that you build. Now, of course, there is quite a bit more to it than that, but hopefully that gives you a little bit of a high-level overview of what Proficy Operation is and what we do. All right, so I'm not going to go into this screen in much detail. I'll just mention that we have been around for a little while now. I think comparatively, we're probably one of the newer products in our portfolio, but we've actually had several releases now. You'll probably notice that in some of our earlier releases, we focused on our data connectivity a lot. So things like the REST connector, SQL connector, OPC UA connections. We migrated and went on to sort of more focus on visualization. So getting sort of specialized widgets as well as stock widgets. And then in more recent releases, we focused a lot on user experience, ease of page creation, and some more specialized areas. So we've been on sort of this whole journey, and I do expect that we'll continue sort of this focus, especially on usability and ease of construction going forward. So I'll just mention that 2026, this is our current release. As it says here, we're in development. We're actually at the very tail end, quashing last-minute bugs and going through regression. So hopefully we'll be out very soon and on time. All right, so I will go into a little bit here just to give folks, a little bit of recap on where we've been. So Proficy Operations Hub 2023 was one of our large releases, and we actually went from our previous editor into a new designer that had things like a graphics editor, out-of-the-box graphics, different types of layouts, and we also focused on things like page building basics, right? Things like nudging over with your arrow support, copy and paste, sort of reordering items, multi-select, things like that. So the idea here was this release was really kind of focused on how to build sort of process diagrams and other graphical type interfaces. In Operations Hub 2024, we have a number of different improvements. So one is click zones, and that's basically the idea that, hey, I've got this interface. It probably has a couple of assets represented on it, especially if you're using graphics. I can click on that asset, and I can do things like refresh the data on the page. I can go to another page. I can, maybe get the trend for that asset. So really sort of spawning actions off of those click zones. We also increased our integration with our trend card and global data. So the idea here is that you can go ahead and change things in your trend card or on your page, and those different pieces will be talking to each other. And then finally, I'll say another piece of our focus was on distortion-free scalable screens. So the idea here is that you can have areas of the screen that are, I call them greedy, right? So they want to get as large as they can. They take up as much space as they can. But especially with graphics, it's really important that they maintain their aspect ratio, right? So that your graphic isn't distorted. So we added more options for you to have regions of your screen either scale irrespective of ratio or keeping into account the ratio. For Operations Hub 2025, we introduced a number of pieces of functionality, one of which is scripting. So we'll be talking about this later in 2026 as well. But we introduced the ability to define scripts in Python. You could sort of build up a list of scripts in your script library. And then when you go to an application, you can add one or more scripts onto the page and go ahead and use them as part of your app. Another item that we did was work on enhanced data binding. And the big idea here is that we have a lot of customers who have experience with some of our other products, including iFIX, Simplicity, Historian, and they maybe have a different way of working with data. Often the experience that they have is really more driven through, I have a widget in my hand, or I have a visualization and I want to browse for the data for that widget, rather than our other paradigm, which was get all the data for the page and then bind the two. So this enhanced data binding is really just providing a more natural experience for configuring data for all of your different visualizations. And that was a big part of 2025. And lastly, we introduced GraphQL support. This is mostly in support of plant applications. They actually helped us build this portion of our product. So it now allows you to connect to GraphQL sources, including the plant applications GraphQL API. So please go ahead and check it out. All right, with all that history, hopefully now we can go ahead and look at Operations Hub 2026, which I'm sure you're all waiting for. The big features that we have are around areas for having a faster time to solution, extensibility in the product, and also central configuration. And I'll just mention that these are sort of themes that we've been working on throughout the previous releases. So hopefully this, you'll see sort of a continuation or a thread of these ideas. For faster time to solution, we have runtime substitution, or the idea that you can swap different data for a particular page and sort of reuse that page for different contexts. We also have faceplates, and I like to call them also templated pop-ups. So the idea here is that you can, you have a pop-up, which is great, but you can also make it in a way that's sort of templatized, and you can reuse it. And I'll talk a little bit more about how you do that, and we'll actually see a demo. For extensibility, this is sort of continuing the thread of scripting, but now we've integrated with something called events. And then finally, we had migration of mimic management area in our classic Operations Hub. So you may know that we are on a journey from our classic Operations Hub, and we've sort of moved over most of the building areas, and we've moved over some select pieces, and we are still continuing that journey. And we've focused on mimic management this time. Okay, so to go into each of these in a little bit more depth, for scripting, as I mentioned, in Operations Hub 2025, we actually introduced scripting. And back then you could go ahead and create a script. It's a Python, a Python freeform editing area. And you could define all the inputs to your script, you define the logic to your script, and you define the outputs. So you could say, hey, I'm expecting sort of 3 arguments coming in, I'm going to do some transformations, and I'm going to push 2 arguments out, or I'm going to push a table out or a list. And the idea here was that you could, take that script, and then while you're building your application, you can trigger that script to be run on things like the page loading, or on a button press, or maybe even when new data comes in. So there's sort of different opportunities that you have to run that script. However, that script is really being run in the context of your page, in the context of your app. So if you're working on this page and maybe you select from like 3 different dropdowns and put the inputs into the script and you run it, it might be different than your coworker who is also looking at that exact same page, but maybe they put in some different inputs in the dropdown and then press the run button. So very much tied to a particular user running that instance of a script and seeing the results on your page. And we sometimes call that client-side scripting. Now for 2026, we've moved on to event-based scripting. So some of you might know that we actually have an events area in Operations Hub. It has been probably a little bit less utilized in the past because it focused more on sort of internal data that we had in entities. But we've now sort of increased the scope of this area so that you can now watch Historian, iFIX, Simplicity, third-party OPC UA data. And you can say, hey, when this tag goes above 37, I want you to do action X. Or, hey, when this tag goes up and this tag goes down, then I want you to do action Y. So you can now run these scripts and do other actions like running queries, I think sending an email on a condition being met, like I mentioned, involving tags, or you can also run them on a time basis. So if you want to have a report that's run, say every week at midnight on Sunday, you could do that. You could set up a timer, and then sort of it will go through, and at that time, it'll kick off the script and run it. So this type of scripting is what we call server-side scripting. It doesn't need an application. In fact, it has no connection and no relationship to any applications. The only thing that I'll say is that both of these features utilize that scripting library that you have access to and that you've been building up. So once you create those scripts, you can use them either in your app for client-side scripting, or you can use them and set up sort of a background monitoring process and use the script there and have it run when a condition is met. All right. Okay, so moving on, one of our big features is tag string substitution. And so this is a feature that has been requested many times in the past. The idea here is that folks generally want to be able to make pages and then take that same page and sort of make it a template and have it work for other assets or other series of tags, right? So in the past, you have actually been able to do this, but it took a bit of elbow grease, I'll say. There was sort of a way that you could do it manually. Here, we're really introducing an easier way to, quickly templatize your pages and your references to tags within those pages using something called string substitution. So with that, we're actually going to go ahead and take a look at a demo of this functionality. What we have is a screen. You've probably seen it before in some of our other demos, but we start out with all the data on the screen being tied to hard-coded tags. And what you're going to see is we're going to sort of parameterize the screen first, and then we're going to take those parameters, right? And we're going to do the substitution on the tag references. So let's go ahead and take a look. All right, so we are here in Operations Hub, and you can see we're launching this screen, which you probably have noticed before. There's quite a bit of data on here. The first thing we're going to do, as I mentioned, is sort of parameterize this page. So we're going to start out by making a number of variables, or as we call them in Operations Hub, globals. They're just a place where you can store a little bit of information. We're making one for each of the main types of data on the screen. So we have things like feed rate, density, discharge flow, etc. Now, whenever you have sort of a placeholder for data, as these globals are, you generally want to give them an initial value. It's a good practice, because if something is expecting a value and it doesn't get it, it could, error out. So we just give a bunch of initial values there. And now here you can see that we're going to our queries. This is the hard-coded string for a tag. And we're just using this notation, and we've put in the name feed rate. And that name matches our feed rate global. So again, here we're on another query. We say we want to convert it. And we're just removing a portion of that reference to the tag. And instead, we're selecting global. Again, another one here. So we're going to the input, which is a tag. We're just selecting that hard-coded piece and putting in that global. So in a nutshell, we're taking all these references and we're saying, most of the string stays the same, but this piece of the string actually changes. And I'm going to put this, symbolic notation that means go get the value from the global as it is now. And so you'll notice here, we're moving on to another section. When a user clicks any one of these different buttons, you can see here on the left-hand side, right, we have a number of different locations. We want to go ahead and set those different globals to match the values that we expect for that site. Okay, so here, if they click home, we're going to use tags 1 through 4 or 1 through 5, because those match. We know that those are the data that comes from the home site. Now, they can go ahead, and you can see here, they're just sort of saying, hey, when this is clicked, go ahead and do this action. We've now gone to the north site. Okay, so if someone clicks that north site button, we're just going through each of those globals, right? So feed rate, discharge flow, all the others, and we're just setting those globals into the actual value that we expect for that site. So pretty easy to do. And you can do this, obviously as many sites as you have. I think there's probably different ways to set those particular values if you would rather not set it to be manual, but we're just showing here how it's done manually. But you go through, and again, you set those globals for every button press. And so now when you come into the screen and you go to north site or northwest site or south site, we're actually taking those globals, and every time you press it, we are pushing a new value in. And because the screen uses those globals in their tag reference, that's why you see the screen start to update. Okay, that was pretty quick. Hopefully you caught most of that. I'll just mention that we'll have this set of screens available afterwards. If you're interested, I'm sure we'll post them somewhere for you to take a look in more depth. Okay, so next let's go ahead and take a look at templated pop-ups. Some of you might be aware that we have pop-ups in the classic Operations Hub, and this is actually one of the things that folks have requested. We sort of migrated from the classic Operations Hub to new Operations Hub Designer, and one of the items that didn't come through yet was the pop-ups. So yes, we have pop-ups now, which is great. But even more than that, the way that we built pop-ups is in a way that you can sort of define all the visuals on the pop-ups, and you can set, hey, these are like the inputs of the pop-up and the pieces that need to bind on the pop-up. So when you use a pop-up on a page, you can go ahead and push values into that pop-up. Now, I'll mention that these sort of templated pop-ups, you can have multiple uses of them on a single page. You can use the same templated pop-up across multiple pages. There's different things you can do with it, but it's really quite extensible. And the goal here, of course, is that you don't have to build sort of a dedicated pop-up for every single instance. So we're going to go through another example. And here you already have the app as before. The app is created, you have visuals on the screen, and we're going to go through making a super basic pop-up that just has sort of a graphic on it and the name of the graphic. And then we're going to put it or call it from the screen. We're going to call it from two different assets, and you should be able to see the name of the asset change depending on which one you launched. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look. All right, so I'm here at the application. We're just going to go ahead and make a new screen. And this screen is going to be our pop-up. All right, so all of the content for the pop-up is in this one screen. Now, as I mentioned, it's going to be a pretty simple pop-up, right? We have this graphic of a turbine, okay? And at this point, we're really just going to show you how to display data, but you can imagine that there's all sorts of controls here, right? You could have set points, you could have gauges, you could have, user entry. So there's different things you could do. These buttons are just a placeholder, but the idea is you can have a fully functional, rich, set of behavior and functionality and visuals in this pop-up, and you can call it multiple times. Okay, so hopefully on the right-hand side, you notice there were some pop-up properties that you could take a look at. Next, we're going to go ahead and just add another global. As I mentioned, a global or global variable is just a place on the screen where you can add a bit of data. So we're calling this asset, all right? And we're going to expose this asset as something that a page can bind to. So anywhere you use this now, you can go ahead and feed that asset input different values, okay? So we're going back to our original page, okay? And here's one instance of a turbine. And you can see that we have a new action called show faceplate. And when you select it, you can set the asset to be that asset variable to be a certain value. So here we're setting it to be turbine A. And then now we're clicking on this other area, okay? And we have the action show faceplate, and we're going to set the value to be turbine B. Again, keep in mind, we're just setting one single variable here, which is the asset name. You could set multiple variables here, or you could have, you could set one variable and then inside the pop-up, you could retrieve additional data. But you see here, if you click on turbine A, it brings the pop-up and you can see that the name has turbine A. And then again, you click on the pop-up for turbine B and it has the name turbine B. Okay, so you don't have to create sort of unique pop-ups every time. You can have this sort of templated pop-up that will work for all of your turbines, for example, or all of your pumps or what have you. So again, it's just another feature really tied to efficiency and quick and easy building. Okay, I feel like I've been talking for quite a while now. This is actually most of the content that I had planned. Hopefully you like it, and I'm going to go ahead and maybe turn it over for some Q&A.